Hello, this is a video. I will talk a little bit about how to uh, copy some buildings from one infra work file into another file. This is going to be very useful for people who accidentally create the buildings in a different file or in the wrong file. I think for people in the right file, this could be also very useful. Because I will explain a little bit how to transfer building and objects out from one project into another. So here I will use two files to demonstrate. So they are all local. One is chapter 2, another is chapter 4. As you can see, chapter 2, the current file, I have these two buildings I just modeled, which is not exist in chapter 4. So my goal is transfer this two building into another infra work file. So first thing I want to explain a little bit about the file structure. When you go to here in the settings and go to export, there are two options. One is a 3D model, another is IMX. IMX is actually a type of data you can open from Civil 3D. You can also open from another infra work file. But if you export for 3D, it's basically generate FBX, which is generic. So either way works. I will show you both, and I will discuss about pros and cons of both version. So the first thing I want to say is this two building is made with two different type of process. The first building is made by just doing one from the city furniture. So you can see this one is actually loaded through the city furniture, and if I want to scale up, it basically uniformly scale up and down, right? So that is basically the same way you do the tree, you do the light, the street light. Another building I did is through the footprint. So this one has image mapped to the facade. Also you can change the scale, but this one is actually changing the height. It's automatically adapt to the store, like 3 levels, 4 levels. You can drag it down. So it's not really uniformly scaled up and down. It has respect for the height of the stories. Alright, so I have these two type of building. I do want to mention this two is very different. In fact, this city furniture is sort of like a standalone FBX type. But this one, if you look at the data source, is actually can be bring in as a vector image. And this one could actually link to a shapefile from GIS. So if you export a GIS data with a lot of building footprint, you can bring them in as a shapefile. In fact, if I take a look at the file structures in my current IFW infra work file, I think this one is a chapter 3, actually chapter 4 or chapter 2. You can see the resource is actually all saved into this local file. Or maybe I use the data chapter 4 to show. Right. So here is the resource, and you can see the 3D models. There's not much thing going on because this one is not really is a shapefile from the GIS. Okay. I think that's, yep, this is all the subfolders. Alright, I think I don't really need to go to that deep. So let's go back here. So how to transfer the files into another infra work. So here's the first thing you do. First, I will try the easier way, which is export 3D model as FBX. So here I will define the polygon. Just include these two, double click, finish. And I do want to just make sure this is FBX, so later I can find it. Yeah, I want to do multiple files. I don't care about the ground, so I will disable that. For building, you really have this footprint based building as the building FBX, and this one is really city furniture. So that is city furniture FBX. So you generate two FBX file. The location, I will just make it easier to find later. I will just put on my desktop. Okay, so select folder, then I will export. There's a target config for the model. Okay, I will ignore because I'm not really doing the ground. Here we go. Alright, so when it's done, you will see these two actual files being generated. Building FBX, city furniture FBX. You should also have this position data, POS, which indicate the location of these two. So later, if I go back to my chapter 4, there's no building here. So I will simply import these two FBX file with a position, so it will land up perfectly on site. Okay, so right now I don't have these two buildings show up. The way you can bring the FBX file in is actually through the data source. You don't have to do the city furniture because that is basically the one you want to do multiple trees or multiple buildings. Then you do that through the the palette, and then in the style palette, there you can add this new palette. But we are not really doing a style. We are just simply do a data source, and here you can input a 3D model as a data source, and I will identify. See, here is reading 3ds obj fbx, right? So here I will identify both files and click open. You're done. So this two files in, but it's not really defined as a feature. So let's start with the building. If I double click, go to 3D, you can see this is actually that building, but it came in as FBX actually. So you cannot really change the height anymore. So I will change the type as I'll call this as a building. You do want to make sure the coordination system is the same. I didn't change anything here, and I click close and refresh. Alright, so the building will show up. I believe this is in the right location, and I will do the same thing for the city furniture. So double click, and you can see the 3D model is actually the post office, and I want to give the type, still maintain this as a city furniture. Close and refresh to have this show up. So both works, but as I said, this is FBX. I change the scale is uniformly change it. So right now this footprint based building is not a procedural anymore. So if you scale up, it's just a static. There's no height control anymore. So that is the kind of pros and cons of using FBX as a way to transfer file. Alright, so I would recommend you try to sync your infra work model online and ask another student to check if they can see your building or not, because I'm a little bit concerned if you adding this data source here, I'm not sure if the cloud can see it. So please double check with your classmates to see if they can see this new change right here. So meanwhile, I will do another demo quickly. Go back to chapter 2, and this time I'm going to export the file as IMX instead of FBX. Okay, and this works only for the procedural model, procedural building. Doesn't work for this one, unfortunately. So here, let's go to export IMX. Define the polygon. I can define both, so I can show you. Although I include this building, it will not show up later. And the file will be exported. I will just put it on the desktop, so it's easier to find. IMX export. That's fine. So done. Then I can go ahead and close the file. If I check the file size, you see the file IMX. Does it show up? Maybe it's not yet. Okay. Yeah, still exporting. Just want to make sure I export it to the right place. Yep, so that's in the right place. And export. Here we go. So it will take a little bit time, and then we should see this show up. So right here, IMX. So if I check the file size, it's about 10 megabytes. So it's a little bit larger than others because this one contains everything: the terrain, the road, the building. So I will go to chapter 4, and I will just remove the FBX file I just loaded. So here in the data source, I'm going to simply delete this building I just loaded. As you can see, this one is FBX, so delete that one. Right, so you see that one gone. And also see the city furniture, I will delete this new building I just loaded. So it's clean. Alright, so now we are going to add a new data source as IMX, and I identify this as my target. And here I will uncheck the roads because I don't want to do roads, I don't want to do points, I don't want to do water, I don't want to do surface. Alright, so basically I just need to bring in the building. As you can see, there's no city furniture in this option, so the post office is actually a city furniture, which is not able to be loaded later. So let's just click OK, and here I will refresh really quick. So now you see the building show up, and this one does maintain the building as a procedural. So if I move up and down, it still respect the levels. So because it's basically a native file type. Alright, so this is the pros and cons of both IMX and FBX. I think for you, if you accidentally create the buildings in another file, maybe you can try the FBX first. And then if everything is procedural based, depends. If everything you did is procedural based, then you use IMX, which will allow you maintain everything as a procedural model. So it depends on the situation. Repeat one more time. If you build your building with footprint procedural, export as IMX. If you build all your building based on the city furniture, right, it's not procedural, then you export as a 3D model. So this is the two options for you.